Welcome everybody to today's webinar on overcoming challenges in the mining industry. My name is Bennett Fitch. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Noria Corporation, and later on I'll be talking with John-Paul Potestio, who's the Regional Manager of Western Canada for UE Systems. So we're looking forward to that in a few. So to kind of get things started, we'll talk about the mining industry as a whole, because we should realize that that is a pretty challenging environment. In fact, because of it, and because a lot of unique things about it, mining is a bit behind the curve and has notoriously been behind the curve when it comes to optimizing maintenance practices and everything that comes around that. So, if that's the truth, what that leads to is a number of other issues, a lot which deal with risk. We see an increase in all different levels of risk, as simple as the production having challenges with keeping things running, keeping uptime up. In fact, about 95-96% of all mining industry facilities deal with unplanned downtime at one point or another throughout the year, and that's just a sheer fact. But other risks can increase as well when things aren't done with maintenance, such as just safety. People safety is a big concern there, and we need to find ways to minimize that. Or other things that this can all lead to, which could be challenges that we see a lot in today's economy, with turnover and people wanting to find better opportunities for them. We have to balance that out with the right ways to keep people in their jobs and have that good retention. So why is all of this happening? We think about mining industry. Well, it's a bit different than a lot of the other different industries that are commonly seen. And one of those is because of how it's inherently challenging to operate things in those conditions. It's very harsh. There's a lot of contaminants everywhere. And in addition to that, these mine sites are very isolated, not just physically from all other society, it seems like. Sometimes I've had to drive a couple hours from anything else just to get to a particular mine site or more. But even within the mine itself, or different kinds of mines, underground mines or surface mines, the different types of equipment are very isolated, which means all of that isolation is not great for your retention, but it's also challenging to keep lubrication activities from happening effectively when everything's in its own area. Even though there may be a master maintenance program, there's all sorts of autonomous activities happening. So between that and contamination challenges, the equipment itself is often pretty large. It's often requiring specialized lubricants, requiring a need for common inspections. So it's very demanding for lubrication challenges. There's also a large number of lubricated equipment, and that's not including all the sealed equipment that typically stays untouched, and they're small to begin with, like sealed bearings or smaller steel gearboxes. The truth is, mining industry has a lot of larger equipment that needs daily considerations, whether it's physical inspections or other lubrication needs. And it has developed over the years a culture of complacency and people doing the same things over and over without realizing there's a better way to do things, and not wanting to make those changes because they're not made in a way to the right or the easiest path. People are going to do things with the path of least resistance, and sometimes the right lubrication practices aren't that, and we need to make it that. And then it also ties into training as well. Are we giving people the right training? And did I say contamination? Because of course, we are in a mine site, so any mining industry is plagued by the contamination that happens around them. Not just the airborne contaminants that everyone experiences, even those that we can't see, but also the product itself, the ore we're mining for, the mineral, the raw material here that's everywhere. So in reality, those making lubrication decisions on a daily basis in the mine sites, they're the ones in the hot seat. They're the ones that are in the hot seat for improving reliability. If they don't make those changes, then they're the ones that management's going to be looking at. So if we talk about the number of large equipment in a mine site, this is an example, typical example of all the different types of lubrication points. You see the vast majority is electric motors. And there's a lot of off-highway trucks or other kinds of machinery, separators, couplings, gearboxes, pumps, miscellaneous others. There's no doubt that you can have north of 10,000 different lubrication points in a single mine site. That's a lot to manage. And if you look at it, a lot of these are really just bearings, different kinds of bearings, and most of the time grease lubricated bearings that just because the way they are maintained, it presents lubrication challenges, often because of a human involvement. Not because people want to do things wrong, but because it's so easy to do things wrong, it makes it hard to get things right. So this is a case study mentioned over the years where this National Research Council of Canada wanted to study, the different types of wear debris, like abrasion, erosion, fatigue. These are different wear modes, adhesion, fretting. And across the various sectors, you see pulp and paper, you see forestry, mining, of course, we'll talk about that in a second, and so on. But all of these presented a common theme or a percentage that focuses on that particles in the oil, particles in the machine, usually those airborne contaminants getting in, they're the ones causing wear debris particles. So particles producing particles is the common theme here. In fact, about 82% of particles or wear particles are produced because of particles in the machines. And mining is a step above that, not in a good way, where mining industry experiences about 95% of particle-induced wear debris is because of particles that were already in there. So we need to make sure we take the extra level of taking care of contamination needs and the overall culture behind the right lubrication practices. So these lubrication practices, as a result, must be at the core to all of maintenance. This is how we're going to make the changes, because the bottom line is, culture has a big part to how we're going to improve what happens in a facility. So we have a few areas to focus on. One of them is, of course, selecting the right lubricant to that type of equipment, to that environment. And I could dive into that, speaking all the different lubricant types and specifying everything that's involved there. That's a topic in itself, and if you've been in any one of our courses, you'll know that we do dive into that. But just managing lubricants the right way can go a long way. So monitoring the cleanliness levels with taking oil samples and getting them through a particle counter and making the right decisions on how clean it should be. Or storing them in the right environment. We always say clean, cool, and dry. If you can manage that with your lubricants, and you're going to go a long way. And that often means just getting your lubricants in a room that has good control of the contaminants and the moisture in the air, and keeping them from getting contaminated by those things around them. And then just labeling or placement to avoid the incorrect lubricant usage. And so sometimes that means just simplifying what you're doing and using a device that already has a lubricant in there, such as a single point lubricator that is attached to a bearing, and you get it straight from the vendor to get it done right. We're training on application best practices, simple training tasks. If you thought about task-based training, these are focused on the activities in hands-on activities, and making sure that everyone's doing it the right way. Daily 1-minute inspections. There's a huge amount of value there with making sure that those who walk by the equipment every single day are spending the right amount of time, and sometimes less than a minute, usually should be, but knowing exactly what to look for. It's beyond just what maybe seemingly intuitive to every person out there, but knowing how to treat it like you're a detective and seeing things that are going to give you the clues to early signs of failure, or ahead of that, being proactive with all the contaminants and other factors around it. And then at the end of the day, you want to also consider integrating new technologies to solve those common problems where human involvement really presents a risk in itself. You don't want to increase the risk simply because you have people doing these daily activities. You want to pair things up right, complement the human factor with technology up to date. Before I dive into that, I want to review the daily 1-minute inspection. This is an example of 13 different things that any individual could look at, could think about when they walk by every single machine. The daily 1-minute inspection is about being intentional with what you're looking for and making sure that you think about what is the normal state of that machine. So those operators, those lube techs, or anyone in the plant, could be the plant manager, could be the mine manager, it could be just someone that happens to walk by. If you make it easy to find out what should be done right, then it's going to make it a lot easier to get it addressed the right way. So speaking of automation, automation can mitigate risk. It can improve reliability. And one of the common ways that we identify the opportunities for automation is with the 4 Ds. The 4 Ds being dirty, dull, dangerous, and dear. Now, so dirty just means kind of like a mine site where there's just contaminants everywhere, and it's challenging to keep it out of the machine. So we need to find ways to automate it so that the human factor doesn't contaminate the machine in that process. Or it could be a dull activity, something that is not a good idea to put a human in charge of, because that repetitive activity, the undesirable aspects of those dull activities, leads to the higher probability that's going to be done incorrectly. Or dangerous. Of course, we want to integrate some technologies or automation where things are dangerous to humans. We want to remove that concern. And the last one is dear, and that basically means the criticality of the machines. How important are those machines to the overall uptime of your process? So think about those 4Ds when you put into the perspective of mining. Automation is best integrated with the common activities, things that are in large numbers, such as typical greasing activities. If you can reduce daily maintenance requirements, if you can increase equipment life, which are the results of good automation, then you are going to reduce risk. Risk can come in different forms, like I've mentioned already, but people, the safety of the people, that's a big one that can be reduced. And you can reduce risk to production, ensuring better uptime, reducing downtime. All that is a result when you properly complement the capabilities of automation and the human element. So think about this, up to 80% of premature bearing failures can be traced to a problem with lubrication. And we've seen that kind of data presented in different ways. This data here shows how material defects, indirect failures, improper mounting, they can lead to failures, but they're at much lower of a scale compared to things like inadequate bearing selection or insufficient lubricant quantity, and even things like long time without renewing with more grease, or unsuitable lubrication, not doing the activities the right way. And of course, the biggest factor here is contamination. So this adds up to an opportunity to change the lubrication plan and using technology to answer some of those common reasons why there's premature bearing failure. So mining industry in specific, it really does have those 4Ds. We have a dirty environment. There's a lot of dull activities. It can be very dangerous, which is probably more dangerous than most other industries. And a lot of the equipment is incredibly expensive. I remember being in a mine site many years ago dealing with a crusher that, because that crusher was down, every hour that went by, they lost $10,000 or something, at least that. I think the number was north of that, but it was at least $10,000 every hour that went by. So coupling that with the needs of proper lubrication, these are the right to lubrications, the right lubricant, the right quantity, time, place, tools, people. What can we do to integrate the right technologies so that the people are able to switch over to utilizing their skills the right way, utilizing their talents to provide the most to that organization. There's tools and people can be complemented to make those solutions. So automation and condition monitoring, this provides an opportunity to solve a lot of this and focus on addressing those 4 primary failure modes associated to rolling element bearings, which includes insufficient lube quantity, incorrect regreasing intervals, the wrong grease being selected, or sometimes letting multiple greases getting into the bearing, and that's often because mislabeling or other incorrect lubrication practices. And of course, contamination. By the way, a lot of the things I'm mentioning here, you'll see a lot more detail on in a white paper that we'll provide a link to, but it focuses on the mining industry and how to address these common issues. So this is where I want to talk a little bit about some of these solutions, and this is why I brought in John Potestio to talk about their OnTrak system. So their system here talks about how it can address these common issues, addresses the 4Ds on why their solution makes sense for this industry. So right now I'm going to introduce to you to John-Paul Potestio. And so he comes from working with UE Systems and is the Western Industries manager over there. So I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me here this afternoon here, Bennett. My name is John-Paul Potestio. I am the Western Canadian Regional Manager for UE Systems. I've been around doing this for upwards of 10 years now with the company. So I'm not new to the mining industry, being here up in Western Canada. I've seen a lot over the course of time, obviously, when it comes to improper lubrication. So it was a perfect time to introduce OnTrak system here as we begin to reimagine how bring lubrication is reinventing how things are done out in the mine sites now. So here's a typical install of an OnTrak system that was installed in a salt mine there. As you can see the pictures in the left there, indicating some of the corrosion being in such a dirty environment, what was going on with their previous lubrication systems that they did have in place there. Where we went in and we actually did the install of the OnTrak, where we ended up had enclosures built for the single point lubricators to protect them from that type of environment. And also you can see the single point lubricators themselves are sealed. They're sealed units, so there's no chance of contamination getting into these single point lubricators, right? So this is allowing us to, obviously using the UltraTrack 850 sensors, to be able to monitor the friction level, so knowing precisely when grease is required, exactly, and how much is required at the time is needed, right? So eliminating that time-based lubrication program and moving along the curve to bring it down to a condition-based or friction-based lubrication now. Understanding to lubricate based on condition versus based on time. Removing those daunting tasks of sending the lube tech out to actually go grease these things based on whatever schedules that they had set previously. Combined with our lubricators, our single point lubricators here is designed to provide precision lubrication remotely with confidence now, right? With the single point lubricators and our utilizing our insights dashboard, we are able to know the remaining grease levels. So there's no creating PMs to actually send people out to determine whether the single point lubricators are working or not, like traditional single point lubricators. With these also, we have a smart system inside there that's allowing us to detect the back pressure, making sure that grease is getting to the asset itself. We also have the capability of pushing grease up to remotely from up to 20 feet. With this system here, it allows us 800. There's about 850 psi of pressure that's pushing that grease through those lines. So, and also it's IoT enabled. So as we move forward in the IoT 4.0 world of things and machine learning, we begin to understand how the equipment reacts, right? So we're able to monitor things in real time. We're trending those friction levels to indicate and provide us historical lubrication insights as to when lubrication is required. We also have the health gauge in there that we are able to sit down with the end users and actually design the dashboard as they see fit, right? And also on the dashboard there, as you can see below the gauge there, we have the lubricative status. So this one indicates as to how much lubrication is actually left in the single point lubricator. So again, we're not creating PMs just to go out and check single point lubricators to ensure that first, are they full? Second, are they working? Right. So we get real-time information all sent to us through the Insights dashboard here. This system here is also designed to give you complete control of the data within your systems or within your facilities too. So we have 3 different types of connections with the OnTrak box. We have a Wi-Fi, Ethernet, or cellular connection. We do have the Modbus and TCPs and REST APIs. So anybody that's looking to send this data to keep it internally without sending it out to the cloud, it can be done. However, with the single point lubricators, the UE Insights dashboard is still required to be able to monitor or to trigger the actions of the single point lubricator. So some of the other OnTrak Smartlube benefits, again, what we've seen from customers thus far that's come back to us, we've seen a 30% decrease in grease consumption in the overall picture of their sites, 65% decrease in premature bearing failures based on proper greasing intervals. And obviously 95% of decrease in manual lubrication tasks. So I guess that 95% of lubrication tasks is boots on the ground, having these lube techs going out and performing these daunting, these time-based tasks, where these time-based tasks can be utilized in other areas of their facilities.
All right, John, thank you so much for that summary on the OnTrak system. It truly is some pretty exciting technology to see the some of the best central point lubricator technology combined with some of the best ultrasonic technology and really provide a complete solution. So as this was going on, we've had a lot of people ask questions, and in fact, there's been a large number of them, but we're looking through them right now and picking some of the common threads of people asking similar questions. So if you don't mind, John, I got a few questions that you can help me answer. One of them is how to better engage reliability managers who are overloaded with issues. What do you think, John?
How to better engage a reliability manager? The overload. What's causing the overloading issues? Those daunting tasks that they're creating for themselves, setting up typical traditional PMs for lubrication routes, where we can simplify that through automation, right?
Okay, John, so here's the next question. It's about personnel. So how do we get people to adapt to a new technology, something different than that they've experienced with and been using for so long?
Well, good question there, Bennett. It's about changing the mindsets that they have on site there, showing them the actual value behind implementing a program such like the OnTrak with the Smartlube system, right? So if we go back and we look at the four Ds, right? Being a dull, a repetitive task that they're going in, dangerous areas that they're going in to do those daunting lubricated tasks. Where now we're eliminating those things by implementing this type of program. So we're not getting away from these people. We're actually improving their work environments by implementing such a technology inside of there.
That that sounds completely on par with what I would say too. When you think about the 4Ds, that's the best way to kind of answer that. Even if it's just a sheer fact of looking at the dual aspect behind some of these tasks, it can create some buy-in. But when it comes down to how the managers might perceive it as well, that's where all the reduction in risks through safety concerns or other production concerns can help answer that. All right, here's the next question. What separates the mining industry from others? Is it the dirt? Is it the duty? What are we looking at here?
What separates the mine from everywhere else? It's the environment that it's in, the dirt, the weather conditions. It's the remote locations. There's so many different factors that lie within that mining industry. The sheer size of equipment that's on site that's being used, right? The condition it's being used in, weather patterns. There's so many different factors that play a role there, right? So
That's great, John. And one of the things I'd add to that is the fact that turnover is a common issue in the mining industry. And well, if you have a technology like this, and you have less needs to train people up on how to do those otherwise manual activities for regreasing, and there's overall there's a minimization of the entire management of these practices, less procedure requirements. So all of it kind of benefits when you put something like this into place. Okay, so the next question here is, what is the biggest challenge implementing a lubrication program?
the biggest challenge that I've seen in all the industries that I've been working in over the past 10 years seems to be culture. Changing, and again, it's changing that mindset as to how do we improve this program? How do we continue moving this program forward, right? Having the right people in the right place, having the right programs in place, the right technologies for that matter, right?
Yeah, I mean, culture is the big one there, and we speak on that substantially in all of our trainings. When you are able to adapt a mindset, a collective mindset with how lubrication is not only done but perceived, having an awareness of how important it is to get those tasks correct, and the effect that has on downtime, it makes a big difference. And we usually speak on like lube room improvements, or doing overall training needs addressed. There's all different ways to address that, but you have to get people to think differently and approach it with a new modernized approach.
Hey, Ben, I just want to interrupt here quickly. just in regards, if we go back to that where we were talking about culture, it's also about adapting new hardware into their programs that they have on site, right? So that new hardware being, people are seeing these things as something new coming in. They're excited. They want to learn about this new technology and how it's going to help them change the way the culture actually is at that point. So.
Yeah, you're completely right. Just having something new there that can give them hope that things will be better, working with something a little bit more modernized can really bring what's needed to adapt that mindset and improve that culture. So that's excellent. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the actual technology here. This is a question to ask. So which components are candidates for ultrasonic greasing? So basically, what speed factor limitations might there be or anything else?
If we look at speed factors itself, Bennett, when we talked with the 850S sensor, our newest sensor that we had implemented with the OnTrak system, the speed factor, we have applications as slow as 1 RPM that we can attach these sensors to. So speed is typically not a factor here when it comes to when we look at ultrasound. And when we're looking at ultrasound as a technology, the slow speed applications even are more viable applications, I guess, when it comes to lubrication. But when we're looking at typical applications where ultrasound is used and where we're primarily using these OnTrak and Smartlube systems, we have some of these systems installed out on primary cyclone pumps, vertical mill pumps, ball mill applications, some of the primary crushers, so some of the shovels in some of these mine sites.
So, John, does that include even mobile equipment?
It does, yes. So where we've seen it on the mobile equipment is actually on the, I don't know how, I don't remember the name exactly, where it's the rotation of it spins at up to, I want to say 700 degrees, where we're able to monitor that typical bearing there on that piece of mobile equipment to identify early stages of bearing functional failure, obviously. And as
That's
we
great.
continued, and obviously as we continue to move on, we're continuing to find more applications within mobile equipment.
That's great, John. So, okay, we have time for one more question. By the way, for anyone else who had asked questions that we're not able to get to today, we will get back to you and answer some of your questions either directly or through John-Paul, so that we can help communicate those to you. So this last question here is, how much would you predict you'd save from installing an automatic lubrication system on machinery? So what do you think, John?
Well, if we go back to one of the slides that I had presented there earlier, this was information that came back from a customer, so indicating that there was a 30%, they see a 30% decrease in the grease consumption. If we look at the manual tasks itself of 95% of having somebody going out and actually doing the lubrication tasks, where we can utilize those boots on the ground to do other tasks. Obviously, we also do have I do have an ROI checklist that I provide that I can work with some of you guys that are looking for as to providing value back to site, where we can actually sit down and determine what's right, what's working, what's not working, and what's the actual cost reduction that you will see, right? So
that makes a lot of sense, John. And what you said there about the ROI calculator, that really answers the first question we had here. I think it was something about how to engage your liability managers or anyone who's making these decisions. Well, that's the easiest way to get that conversation started, is by showing for their equipment, for their numbers of machines and their type of industry, type of mine site, what that return on investment might be. So that's a great way to kind of get that conversation going. So good to have that resources. So for anyone out there who wants to kind of get that tool, definitely reach out to John and he'll provide that. And thank you so much for everything else that you provided, John. So this is concluding our webinar. I appreciate everyone's time. Hope you were able to learn a few things about lubrication and how to address these challenges in the mining industry, and you really start considering some of the technologies out there, such as what UE Systems here provides with their OnTrak systems. Even if it's just trialing it for a little while and experiencing those benefits and seeing the successes, a little bit of success can snowball into a little bit larger success and go on from there. And I've seen this happen with this type of technology right here in many different environments. The mining industry by far will benefit the most from it. So again, appreciate all your time. If you have any more questions, feel free to let us know. We'll have links provided below on any more information on this technology. With that said, John, anything else you want to say?
No, I just want to thank you guys for having me on here this afternoon and enabling us to talk about our OnTrak solution with the Smartlube. I do look forward to hearing from some of our end users out there and some of our customers reaching out.
Great, John. I really appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.